All right. So welcome everyone to the July meetings of the Tompkins County Development Corporation and the Tompkins County IDA. We will be having the Development Corporation meeting first. However, we will take public comment for both meetings now. So I guess I should call the meeting of the Development Corporation to order. And then we have public comments from Teresa Alt, who's here in person, and Zachary Wynn, who is online. Teresa?
Does this work?
Yes, ma'am, it does.
Most of the time.
Okay, I'm Teresa Alt, 206 Eddy Street, City of Ithaca. I looked at the Beacon Community application. This is the workforce housing that this city and community needs. Of course, whether it actually works depends on whether the rents turn out to really be affordable to people at such incomes. Library Place long ago gained support from the IDA with claims that were not reflected in the resulting apartments. I hope the IDA also examines critically some of the other claims that the developers are making. For instance, they say that the apartments will be within easy walking distance of South Hill Business Park, where buses stop. I have tried to walk to South Hill Business Park. It was very hard. There is no sidewalk along the west side of Aurora Street, where Southworks will be. The town of Ithaca considers it enough to have a sidewalk along the east side of the street, but it is impossible to cross from high up a steep slope where the sidewalk is, with a ditch at the bottom, to the west side where the business park is. I had to walk all the way up to the light at Ithaca College, cross the road there, and then walk over grass to the parking lot where I think the bus stops. In my case, I was looking for a meeting room. I worry that people will move in, and when they find out how difficult it is, will buy cars. I also worry about whether the buses will go to Cornell, where the jobs are likely to be. I also see a problem with the partial financing by LIHTC. This lasts 30 years. Then the tenants are evicted and the apartments refurbished to be expensive. That happened recently at Chestnut Hill, now called Whispering Woods. Beacon claims to have a track record throughout New York State. Please do due diligence and check it out, not only with business organizations, but also with tenants' unions in the places where they operate.
Thank you. Zachary?
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we can.
Thank you very much. I was hoping to inquire about the status of the re-examination of the agreement between the IDA and the Vecino Group regarding the Asteri building. I originally noticed that there were four smashed windows on 4 different floors in mid-April, reported it to a legislator who forwarded that concern on to the fire department. It is now almost 3 months later, and those windows are still broken. And it's either a question of them not desiring to fix those windows or not having the means to, perhaps because they owe glaziers for work that has previously been done. The circumstances at the Asteri have improved somewhat with control of the front door by security, but there was recently another death there. 50 plus evictions have been recently discussed in the Ithaca Voice. So the totality of the situation, while somewhat improved, has not fundamentally changed. And I know that there are some limitations on what you folks can discuss due to ongoing litigation, so on and so forth. But any update you could provide on the status of the agreement and if it is, truly being ended, any sort of nuance you could offer would be greatly appreciated. I can tell you that just walking past the building on my way to go get hot dogs from Lou, it is a rough scene out there pretty much consistently. Puddles of urine, people sleeping outside, shopping carts, and it's just really not a good look. So whatever you could do to shed light on the situation would be very helpful. So I yield the remainder of my time, and I thank you very much.
Thanks, Zach. Okay. I would just note that, as Mr. Nguyen observes, there's really not very much we can say at this point, other than that we're paying attention and doing whatever we can. All right, so additions to the agenda, anything to be added?
None.
Okay, thank you. So we'll move on to business. The first item of business, in fact, the only item of business, is Ithaca College's bond application for a refinance. Kurt, I'm going to hand that over to you and Mr. Israel.
Yeah, thank you, Deborah. Yep, so this is a fairly common practice, a refinance. Ithaca College has done that half dozen times in the last 10 years or so. Not something we do often at the DC, but is definitely a vehicle that we are equipped to help with. Today we have Mark Israel, who's the AVP for Business and Finance from Ithaca College with us. So I'm going to ask Mark to come forward. And Russ Gensel, who's here virtually, has been very involved with their legal team in preparing this document. So I'll actually let Russ do the introduction and then Mark answer your questions.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, Russ.
And I apologize for not being able to attend, just some difficult travel the last few days. So as Kurt noted, Ithaca College has submitted an application to the LDC solely for the purpose of refinancing some existing bonds going back to 2015. There's no new money, no secret review needed. They do, with their bankers, want to move relatively quickly, hence the firestorm that I somewhat created, which has been resolved. So the schedule is, you'll hear a presentation today. The public hearing for TEFRA, which is called the TEFRA hearing, is scheduled, Anna, correct me if I'm wrong, on the 16th?
That is correct. 10 a.m. is a virtual.
Russ?
And then we post.
For the benefit
And
of our huge audience, could you tell people what TEFRA is?
Sure, it is a requirement under the federal tax regs. This is not state law like the IDA, that we hold a public hearing. It's intended to be a checks and balances between conduit issuers like the LDC and the community. And after that hearing, we have to receive what's called the TEFRA approval, which basically authorizes the issuance of the bonds by the LDC, and that is coming from the county ledge. It goes before the budget committee, and Deb and Ina, thank you very much for helping us logistically coordinate that on the 13th, if I recall correctly. Assuming that the committee makes recommendation to the full ledge, it will be presented on the 21st, and then they'll come back to the LDC, presumably at its August meeting. You know, a lot has to happen from the deal side of things between now and then, but that is the plan right now. So we're trying to get some of the ministerial acts over with, the public hearing, the TEFRA approval, and then this board's final approval in August, in order to accommodate what is, somewhat of an aggressive schedule. They want to get to market. Okay. And again, Deb and Ina, thank you for assisting in getting that part of it done.
You're welcome. That's our job.
Yeah, go.
And really, that's it. There's no new money. They're refinancing existing debt to take advantage of some advantageous, interest rates, and it's pretty straightforward. So we'll be back to the LDC, assuming everything goes through the county process at your August meeting.
Thanks, Russ. Does anyone have questions for Mr. Israel?
No, Deb, but I have to recuse myself from any action on this as I serve on the Board of Trustees at Ithaca College.
Okay, thank you, Jerry.
Do we still have a quorum with that recusal? We don't need any action today. It really, today is just an acknowledgement from the board if it's willing to give it to us. that we've scheduled the public hearing and that you've received the application. The actual approval will come in August when the documents are in substantially final form.
So this is
So there's
just,
really nothing to move today.
this is just informational.
Correct.
And we still would have a quorum. There would still be 4 of us, but Shauna has a question?
Yeah, I was looking on page, it has, let's see here, it has page 4 and 5, and it looks like the 2 bottom questions were not answered, and just wanted to see if we could get answers for those.
Can you specify which questions
Yeah,
those are, Sean?
if the applicant is unable to obtain financial assistance for the project, what will the impact be on county, city, town, and village? And then describe what green building practices you plan to use. And I realize that this is not new building, and so I would just expect to see like an NA there.
And yeah, they're NA, because we're not.
Both of those are NA?
Yeah, because
Okay.
we're not building anything new. Yeah. Sorry.
Okay, anything else? All right then, sorry to have dragged you down this.
Thank you for your help. Really appreciate everyone's
You're welcome.
time.
We always try to help.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks. The next item on the TCDC agenda is Chair's Report. I don't have a Chair's Report other than to say that I'm really glad that somebody needs us again. Kurt, is there a staff report?
There's not, no.
All right, then we have minutes approval from the May 13th board meeting. Why is it May? What happened to June?
There were no meetings in June or July for the Development Corporation.
Oh, okay. All right then. Can I get a motion on the minutes from May, please? Duck moves, Shauna seconds. I don't know if you're in voting status, Greg. I think Russ indicated that you're just a spectator today, unfortunately.
Sorry, I was on mute. Greg, yeah, you can participate, but you just can't vote or count towards a quorum.
Okay, so we can vote with hands. All in favor of the minutes? Thank you, that's unanimous. Does anybody have anything they want to bring up before we adjourn and move into the IDA? All right, then, we are adjourned, and I will open the meeting for the Industrial Development Agency. We've already heard privilege of the floor. I have no additions to the agenda. Kurt, is there anything you wanted to add?
No, I'm quite happy to say it's a pretty vanilla agenda.
You don't need to look so happy about it. All right, then. Let's move on to business. We have a presentation on Beacon Communities LLC application for the first phase of Southworks. So I would invite the people who are here to address that to take a seat at the table where there are microphones, and I will ask Kurt to introduce us.
Yeah. I'd be happy to do that. I'll give them a chance to seat themselves. So I think you know our Southworks contingent, Rob Lewis in the sport coat and Sarah Barden there to our far left. Joining us from Beacon Communities is Dan Belgraf with the tie on in the middle. And when you introduced yourself, I should have asked you to spell it. Could you tell the audience here who you are?
Yes, Tisha McCoy.
Tisha's with Beacon as well, and they've come over from Buffalo.
Oh, my hometown.
We love Buffalo.
I do too.
So as you see in the community benefit memo, this is kind of the first substantive phase of the Southworks base pilot. And effectively, Beacon is seeking to cleave off 2 tax ID parcels and create 230 units of affordable housing between 50 and 80% AMI. 100 apartments in the city of Ithaca, 130 in the town of Ithaca. that's kind of the gist of it. Save for one thing that in the base pilot of the Southworks project, it was required that 20% of units be affordable, and this actually would get that initial base pilot and application by Southworks to 25% as well. So it's not just hitting the marks, it's exceeding them. So with that, I'll turn it over to the project team and let you give a little intro to who Beacon Communities is and the project specifically.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for having us. So my name is Dan Belgraff, like Kurt said. With Beacon Communities, we're a full-service developer, owner, management company for affordable, mixed-income, and market-rate rental housing. So we own about 20,000 apartments, in, mainly in the Northeast and the Mid-Atlantic. In New York State, we have about 2,000 apartments. We've developed, just under 1,000 units in New York State. It's our first time in the Ithaca market. Like Kurt mentioned, I'm from Buffalo. Tisha's not from Buffalo, but on my team in Buffalo. We spent a lot of time in Western New York doing a lot of work, but really her and I focus all throughout upstate New York on the I-90 corridor between Buffalo, Albany, and kind of everywhere in between. Beacon partnered with the Shift Capital team and larger Southworks project just over 2 years ago. And originally the project was envisioned as like a much smaller affordable housing project in the town of Ithaca. We didn't get a tax credit application funded. New York State said, hey, we like Ithaca, we love the market, there's an extreme need there. Can you make the project a little bit bigger? And we'll take you down the 4% bond path. And we said, we can absolutely make it bigger, we'll do our best. So we spent about 6 or 7 months making it a little bigger, about 130 apartments, and there was some federal legislation that changed one of the programs that we use, which essentially allowed the state of New York and really the entire country to be able to do more affordable housing using the LIHTC program. And the state of New York asked us if we could make it 250 apartments, and I'm happy to say we spent 6 or 7 months again, kind of going back to the drawing board. We were able to get 230 apartments that Kurt had mentioned. A mix of 1, 2, and 3 bedroom apartments, all regulated by, New York State Homes and Community Renewal. We are currently scheduled to close with the state of New York in October, in their October bond round. They're going to package us up with, a few other projects throughout the state. Just a little bit more about Beacon. It's a company that I've worked for just about 4 years, and I've worked for a couple other developers. But we are certainly a mission-driven organization. I think one of the primary reasons that drew me to the company was the focus on our residents. There's a lot of groups, a lot of developers, and quite honestly, a lot of management agents that it's here's my rent check, thank you for the keys, and it's not how Beacon operates. We have an entire team of resident service, resident engagement, community engagement, about 80 staff members, who work on our projects to support our on-site property management teams. This Southworks project that we're working on with Shift doesn't have a supportive housing component, but even if in those projects and those communities that don't have supportive housing components, there's someone there helping our management team bridge the gap in any way they can to make sure that housing stability is promoted, to make sure that eviction is an absolute last resort. And really getting people connected with any kind of services they need. If it's financial literacy, if it's workforce development, really anything under the sun, to make sure we're building communities where people can stay and live their lives. So I'm going to kind of close by saying I know we're new to the area, not new to New York State. One of my colleagues says it best, when we go into a new community, our goal is to be invited back, right? That's the type of organization we are. We love what we do. We're passionate about it. We want to do more work in Ithaca. Hopefully after Southworks is done, we can find something else to work on together, but happy to answer any questions the board has.
Thank you. Shauna?
Thank you for bringing this forward. I will say that I am definitely a little gun shy because we have right now a project here that is not very successful, and it's causing a lot of grief amongst the people that are living there, as well as it's using a lot of our city and county resources because it's very poorly managed. And so with that said, the vetting for this project is probably going to be pretty hard. I wanted to ask a little bit, I noticed in your application, you had mentioned that there would be 6 employees.
Yep.
Can you talk about what those positions are and how they would interact with the residents?
100%. So there's 6 full-time staff positions. There's a property manager, an assistant property manager, and an administrative assistant that are really focused on the day-to-day operations, leasing, income recertifications. Those people work hand in hand with a resident area service manager who is connected to our community engagement program, right? To link any tenants that really need outside assistance, right? And then the additional 3 staff members are maintenance superintendent, 2 maintenance technicians who are supported by our regional maintenance director. So full-time, 100% on-site management, primarily located in the woods in the town of Ithaca portion. That's where the primary office function, I'll call it, is going to be located. But also a satellite office that'll be used in the gateway portion in the city, to make sure that there are staff, eyes and ears, and someone who's there, quite honestly, just to, if tenants need something.
Will there be security?
Yeah, yep. So they're not on-site security like a guard per se, but the buildings have a really extensive camera system. We use a consultant pretty much exclusively on all of our deals called Safer Places, who is, what I like about it, they're outside of like our architectural firm that comes in. Not that our architect isn't wonderful, they're doing an amazing job. But they're a company that knows what our standard is for access controls, for security cameras, to make sure that the grounds are safe.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Shauna?
No.
Okay, anybody else? Doug?
I know it's not always like, so I'm not an expert in this area, and you can't always just divide like the total cost by number of units, but I have noticed that the per unit cost is exceptionally high compared to other recent projects that the IDA or the Tompkins County Community Housing Development Fund have seen, which lately have hovered over 300, and this is well over 700. I'm curious if you can help us understand the source of that massive price.
Yeah, of course. It is. It's higher than most projects I've worked on, and it's driven by infrastructure costs, the roadways, water, sewer, primarily in the woods. I think that that's what's driving it. It's obviously located on the side of a hill, so there's a lot of earthwork, particularly that needs to be done, but also the infrastructure that has to go in place. I will say, and I thank everyone locally whenever I have a chance to speak in a setting like this, that the county was awarded $1 million from New York State Empire State Development specifically for infrastructure for this affordable housing piece. And the town of Ithaca, we partnered with them, and they were awarded $5 million as a part of the Pro Housing Supply Infrastructure Program Fund. So I always say thank you, because pro housing communities are the only communities that can access that, but it also brings in $6 million worth of leverage to help with HCR resources to get projects like this done that need the help specifically with infrastructure.
So would that bring that number down from 700 to lower?
It would, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can someone from Shift maybe talk about how the $38 million state grant factors in, if it does at all?
The $38 million Achieve grant is pretty tailored to particular uses that were outlined in that application, and is not primarily towards housing. That's not what that grant was about. We are looking at ways to maybe take the pieces of that grant that speak to infrastructure and are making sure that we're scoping that properly so that that infrastructure does support the execution here, especially on the city side where we see a potential synergy there.
Thank you.
Jerry?
Just curious about the unit mix. You're pretty heavy on 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, not many threes. which leaves not much opportunity for families. Just was wondering how you arrived at that mix.
Sure. I think it was a mix of, working with, we always work with a local market analyst who knows specifically upstate New York. We didn't have, I guess it's kind of twofold. There is a market, and I think there will be smaller families in the twos, certainly larger families in the threes. But I also think it's a function of the site, right? Specifically in the gateway portion in the city of Ithaca, we have two, low-rise apartment buildings that really typically only accommodate 1s and 2 bedrooms. Whereas in the woods, we had more opportunity to build a townhome setting, right? We typically don't put 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom apartments in apartment buildings because kids love to play. I think kids should have a door to the outside, right? So they can go right out, play in the woods, for example, or, in the grounds. But that's really how we got to it, is the space that we had available for, townhomes specifically to create that, quite honestly, like a neighborhood in the woods portion. It was kind of limited.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Anyone else? I have a question. It's more of a request. You mentioned LIHTC.
Yeah.
Could you expand on what that is and how it influences this or plays in with this project?
Yeah. Do you want me to do like a LIHTC 101?
That would be lovely.
I was an adjunct instructor at the University of Buffalo this year with some graduate students on like affordable housing and practice. So the program was created in 1986. Up until then, there was a lot of federal housing policy, but there was really the federal government was kind of getting out of development. So in 1986, the Section 42 was created, which created the low-income housing tax credit program. And you get the tax credits one of two ways. You either competitively apply to the state where you're located, very, very competitive, or you go down the tax-exempt bond financing path, which this project is going down, and you're allocated tax credits. I never call them as of right because you still need a lot of approvals to get them, but they come along with the tax-exempt bonds. And then we use that equity, like $1 of tax credit equity, sell it to a tax credit investor who gives us typically anywhere between like 85 cents to 95 cents for every dollar of tax credits, which generates, I would say, anywhere between 65 and 75% of the sources that we need to get the deal done. It also comes with a lot of regulatory restrictions. There's, not only responsible to the state of New York if they fund your project, but also to your investor, to the IRS. So you always want to make sure that your units are in compliance with households who can afford the rents. That's a huge thing that we work on. Is the rent cost burden, not putting people in units that are, they're not spending 50% of their income towards housing. It's typically capped at a maximum of 33%, which is generally considered affordable. As part of the financing that comes with it, HCR will put a regulatory agreement on the property that makes sure that it's affordable for a minimum of 30 years. It's not uncommon for them to put a regulatory agreement to make sure it stays affordable for which I've seen in recent years, or recent deals that we've done, particularly in upstate New York. I will say, Beacon is, we're a long-term owner, we're a long-term management agent. There are groups who build stuff and sell them. Beacon is not one of them. One of our ways that we grow as an organization, and really to make sure that we can continue providing the level of property management services we can is by growing our portfolio, right? There's an economy of scale that we have that we're able, with tight operating budgets, but having a sizable portfolio to be able to staff things properly by, using maybe other larger projects in other states or other communities that can help support our smaller properties. I don't think that's the case with this one. It's a healthy sized property that can support 6 staff positions, but this will, and like all of our properties, have that bench strength of Beacon behind it.
Thank you.
Of course.
Anything else from anyone? Doc.
Just to continue Shauna's line of questioning, and you just mentioned it too, can you talk more about your property management approach and tenant selection and kind of the other things. Again, obviously we have this this massive issue in town, and a certain other developer and property management agency just kind of has not been sufficiently selective. And we want to make sure that doesn't happen again. And just as an aside to what you just answered, did you consider the 9% competitive light tech, or are you kind of focused on I know you just said you don't like buy right, but the buy right one?
Yeah, I'm going to answer the second part first because it's easier. We did, when we were doing a smaller project that wasn't funded, it just wasn't competitive enough because there's a lot of groups out here. That was going to be a 9%. So it was a smaller, I think maybe it was like 60 apartments at the time. So we did consider it, but we weren't successful with our application. That's when HCR had come to us to ask us to kind of pursue the 4% tax exempt bond path. So the property management end of things, there's a management plan that's attached to any property management agreement, including this one. Also a tenant selection plan that's also, all these things are approved not only by investor but by HCR's asset management team. And I think that's the nuts and bolts of how tenants are selected, right? Certainly tenants have to be income eligible. There are household size guidelines, like specifically how many people can live in apartments based on the size of the unit. But really, I think what we focus on, aside from that, is making sure someone is going to be housing stable. It's not just what the income is on paper, right? I think there's a deeper look that Beacon does to make sure, okay, well, maybe this doesn't line up necessarily, right? And I've heard about certainly with the partnership with Shift, I quite honestly can't believe some of the things that I've heard.
Neither can we.
They're real.
We have pictures.
I consider Kate De La Garza, I know, has been a big help locally trying to house people, consider her a good friend. And there are so many eyes on these properties. I'm just quite honestly shocked to hear that some of the things that I've heard. People who've been put into apartments that obviously couldn't afford to be in those situations. I laugh because I know it's not funny, but I don't know why you would do that, because the property suffers. Like almost like you want to lease the property up, right? You want to get it stable, but if you're leasing it up with people who can't afford rents, you're setting yourself up for failure, right? And it's just not what we do, right? We want to make sure anyone who is in a unit that moves in is stable, right? We want them there for the long term, right? And that's the goal.
And just lastly, since three of us are on the TCAD board, in the application you mentioned you'd like to have a TCAD bus stop. I just want to make sure you've actually communicated with TCAD, because we love providing service, but we don't always either have the resources or we need a plan to get there. So I just want to make sure you do that.
Yeah. Do you want to?
So the Beacon teams met with TCAT, the Southworks teams met with TCAT. Beyond that, we are still working towards the sort of overall Southworks TCAT plan, which is going to take shape over the years as we grow. But they've already opened a bus stop at our front door, which we very much appreciate. We've talked about the potential to do some routing up or down that hill sort of through the Southworks campus once the infrastructure is built out to support that. So, there's a lot of wood to chop there, but that relationship's very positive and the conversation's very open.
Thank you. And just to comment, I've been largely supportive of Southworks and Chamberworks before, and I'm certainly supportive of this as well.
Thanks, Doc. Anybody else?
Yeah.
Deb, this is Russ. May I ask a quick question?
Sure, but Prentice jumped the line, so.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. We'll get to you next.
No,
Thank you.
I was just going over the construction labor part. A little concerned about the use of local labor. It says only 15%.
I can certainly, so we are working closely with Pike Construction as our general contractor. I can certainly talk to them, about that, see what the opportunity is there.
Yeah, just bear in mind, we have a policy that's considerably above 15%.
Yeah, but this project being entirely affordable housing is exempt from that policy.
Oh,
Yep. So, and any housing that is, I think 80% or more of units are for affordable, they don't have to comply with the housing policy.
Good to know.
This one being 100 definitely does not.
Okay, great. Well, then never mind.
Change that policy.
All right, if there's nothing else, then I would entertain a motion to accept this application so that we can move it to a public hearing.
I would second that.
Okay, so Jerry moves, Duck seconds. All in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you very much.
Appreciate your time. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
We're excited too. Very much appreciate your help.
It's exciting.
All right, so we have, oh, gosh, I'm sorry, Russ, you had something.
Oh.
No. It's something I can ask them offline. The question I had for them was, whether or not their team considered using, the LDC or the IDA as the issuer of the tax exempt debt versus the HCR entity. But I think I know the answer to my own question, so it's no big deal at all.
Okay. If you think that's something you'd like to share with the board, either now or.
They're still here, Russ, if you want. Look, this being my first IDA meeting as interim administrative director, I certainly think would benefit by learning the answer to that question, whether it be from Beacon or from Russ or a combination thereof.
Yeah, let me follow up. Sorry, my computer just froze there for a second. So, and again, I apologize for not being there. Let me follow up with them. And I think, like I said, I think I know the answer to my own question, but I would just like to hear it from them.
Well, we're here.
They're right
It doesn't impact this board's decision at all. It doesn't change the project. It's just
I think the more we know about it, the better.
Yeah.
Yeah, my recommendation would be to proceed. This is just a ministerial act by authorizing the public hearing. And this is going to take quite some time to put together, is my guess, given the size of it.
Yeah, so just the question was if there was a consideration to get the tax exempt bonds through the IDA versus HCR.
Well, through our development, our LDC.
Oh, yeah. So we think HCR likes to do it. I think they typically prefer to do it. I don't know if this is the case. The last I knew, HCR really wasn't considering IDAs or local issuers being able to issue those bonds. There was a project that, I can't remember the name of it, that HCR I think felt burned on. And it kind of, not that I've ever done a project where HCR hasn't been the tax exempt bond issuer, but this project that happened, I think quite a few years ago, HCR kind of had a knee-jerk reaction and said, we're not doing it anymore, right? We're gonna issue the bonds, we're gonna issue the tax credits, and that's kind of how the development community in New York State's been kind of guided, at least over the last, I would say, 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, and this is Russ again. He's putting it nicely, basically.
Try not to name names.
Uh-oh, you froze again. Are you somewhere cold, Russ? There you are. You're back.
Sorry, did I freeze?
Yeah.
He put it nicely. I don't know what you heard. Essentially, our experience in recent years has been that HCR will not provide the tax credits, which are critical to this type of project. That won't happen without them unless they use the state issuer. So it doesn't really impact your participation. I just wanted to ask the question.
Thank you. That's good for all of us to know as well. Okay, now you can go.
Sorry about that.
We'll stay by the door just in case.
No, we'll see you in a couple of weeks, I guess. Thank you. All right, Russ has I guess I'll put you in charge of this discussion, Russ, since you came up with this.
So at last month's meeting, I believe it was, I think it was Shauna was asking, and the board was asking, hey, what do other IDAs do with respect to, projects that are up and running that haven't made their job requirements? I polled our group, which again works, across the state, and the general consensus was that nothing formal. They asked for an explanation. The form that I provided to you, which is just an example, something that the board could consider. At least then, if a company is not meeting their job representations, they're required to provide an explanation. And as you all know, if they don't meet their job representations, that those are covenants contained in our closing document. So it is a technical event of default. And as I think we touched upon last month, it's a hard balancing act, because if they're not meeting the job creation requirements that they had hoped to and promised to this board, that means they're probably not doing as well as they had anticipated. And to default them based upon that without having a full story, my guess would put most companies in a much worse position. So I thought that this form might be at least something we could include as part of the labor covenant, that, if you don't comply, we're going to be sending you a form with an explanation, and you'll need to address it to the board.
Okay, thoughts? Prentice?
I definitely believe it's a good start. I mean, I think it definitely should be added.
Okay.
And Deb, I can fine tune it a little bit, make it a little bit tighter. I just wanted the board to see kind of what at least Monroe County is doing.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I mean, I think there are a lot of questions we need to ask ourselves and decide as a board. Yeah, we can do something like this, but the real question in my mind is, what's a sufficient explanation? And a lot of that, as far as I can tell, is going to depend on how many jobs did they promise? How big of a project was it? How far short of what they promised did they actually fall? I mean, I don't know how else to put that. If somebody comes in and says, we're going to make 90 jobs, and you end up with half of that, that's a really big problem. If somebody said, we're going to do 15 jobs, and they end up with 12, that's a whole different kettle of fish. So, yeah, I guess that's something I'd be interested in hearing what other people have to think about.
What, if any, explanation do we currently get from jobs reports? If they submit a number that's substantially lower than what they anticipated, what do they say along with it?
I think Ina has the most historical background with this.
So typically, after the audit's gone through and we have all the reports, the job report is pulled together, and the practice had been that the administrative director then would reach out to each project individually and have a discussion about the shortfall, asking, what is your explanation, what can we do to help? And that would be put into that memo. The last few years, it was not as robust as it could have been potentially, but that has been the practice from the beginning since I came on to the organization. It's a verbal discussion with the administrative director and the person who's promised.
But there's nothing in writing.
Correct.
I mean, it would be nice actually to have this form, and then we would have something in writing. And my limited experience with this is that we've kind of accepted the recommendation of the director as to whether or not a shortfall has been adequately explained. It probably wouldn't hurt to have a protocol with some metrics. But again, Jerry, you looked like you were going to say something.
Well, I just, I'm not familiar enough with what the practice has been, but it seems like the information comes a little too late in the process. We're not doing, since it doesn't feel like a regular check-in on what the job progress is in terms of number of jobs. I mean, this seems like it could address that. And so with some, I wouldn't suggest this be a monthly thing, but at some interval, a check-in on how the job creation is going, and then would be, I think, useful.
Shauna?
I think what would be very useful as well is whenever they're filling out the application, the administrator can let them know that they should probably be pretty conservative, because if there's a shortfall there, then we're going to question it, and it could mean that we roll back pilots or
issue penalties.
Yeah.
But they also know we look at job creation as part of the thing, so that's their balance, I guess, to figure out. But
yeah,
I'm just trying to avoid what we just went through.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the main concern here is if there aren't guardrails, then it's easy for them to puff. And, people on this board have different emphases on what they find appealing and what they're voting for. And for some of us, it's job creation. So there's always that temptation to be over-optimistic.
A couple comments, and kind of directed at Ina, even with her knowledge of all these programs. So to Jerry's point, it at times seems like pulling teeth to get some folks to do their complete reporting at the end of the year. I wonder the practicality of even quarterly job reports from them. In the IDA applications that I've seen over time in the 6+ years that I've worked here, jobs are typically projected out years 1, 2, and 3, not in year 10. Right. And I wonder if making this, a mandate, if the check-in, the early intervention, we'll call it, actually occurs after that first year and second year and third year, right? So we still have X number of years remaining on this pilot or tax incentive program, and you didn't hit your marks in the first few years. Now we can talk about what's going to change over the next 7 or whatever the term is, right? To really use that first set of reports as our intervention or as our warning flag to do something about it.
I mean, we came up with a formula last time to figure this out, but it all felt a little clumsy, and so after the fact kind of thing that we really, I think an emphasis on the importance of this at the time of signing, and putting a little bit more teeth into it is probably a good idea.
Yeah.
Well, I think we haven't been very good about holding people accountable. It's not my impression that up until like the last year or so, we've actually said, hey, wait a minute. You didn't do this and you didn't do that, and there's going to be consequences to that. And I think that consequences are important because it will readjust the expectations of developers who seem to think or have thought in the past that once they get that pilot, they're done with us and they can just go on and do whatever they want to do. The trick is how to set up a system to hold people accountable that's actually doable.
Well, hey, Ross, I'm just curious. You got this from Monroe County, I guess. The effectiveness of this form, is there any, the efficacy of it at all talked about?
Yeah, in my conversations with both my partner that works primarily with them and their 2 lead staff people that kind of run the show, is that when they send this out, there is typically a response, and they typically require that they attend a meeting, is my understanding anyway, don't quote me on that, to explain. And they really typically do not take any further action because the explanations have been sufficient to the board's satisfaction. And it hasn't happened very often. As Deb noted, if you promise 95 and you create 15, okay, that's a serious red flag. Whereas if you promise 15 and produce 13, that's something the board may be a little bit more lenient on. So in my experience with other IDAs personally it's been a case-by-case basis on how to handle it. And I don't see many, and I don't recall any projects, defaulting and recapturing and shutting down the benefit, approved benefits as a result of job creation. I can do a little bit more research on that, Jerry, to see what, if any of our IDA clients have really laid the hammer down, but I personally have not experienced that.
Okay, well, that's helpful to know.
Ina, in the reporting annually, is in any of the documents that our customers have, is there a question that's similar to number 2 on this document? Please provide clarification and comment on why jobs were not met.
Not currently.
Well, I think forcing people to put it in writing is a really good idea.
Yeah, and I'd say I think, in the new tack we've taken really to empower you, the board, to have all the information presented to you, and then you can decide who you want to call in, who you want to question, and what you want to do about it, instead of anecdotal reports from the director that it's the paperwork is the paperwork, right?
Yeah.
So kind of a functional question. I don't know, Russ, from a legal perspective, or Ina from a practical perspective, if a form similar to this were created and approved by you all, can we just tack that on to existing projects and obviously add it to new ones, or is there a mechanism
if
or
the board
restriction?
adds this as part of its application process or closing document process, we can impose that on existing projects and obviously projects going forward. The one thing that I would think about, and Jerry said, maybe we should have a closer look more frequently. Just think, you got to think about the administrative burden of the number of projects that you have out there and getting bombarded with job reports and how to really interpret those. But yes, we can make this retroactive and certainly going forward, whatever the form or information that is being requested by the board relative to job creation.
Well, I don't think retroactivity is that much of a problem. All you're doing basically is checking up on whether they have actually performed as they promised to in their original application.
And they're required to provide that information anyway as a matter of law under the parish reporting, so.
Right, so if there's a delta below the line, here's your form, fill this out and return it.
Exactly.
And honestly, it provides.
Chuckling though.
Only once a year, Ina, only once a year.
We need to.
And honestly, not for lack of a better way of putting it, it provides the board cover too, versus just saying, okay, they didn't meet their jobs, let's move on to the next thing on the agenda. You have an explanation that is part of the record of proceedings as to why. And so if anyone ever questions, to say, look, we did our due diligence. They had a reasonable explanation. Here it is. Whereas in the past, I don't know if that was really done.
It wasn't.
I could be, okay.
All right.
Well, and like I said, Deb, I can fine tune and this, and maybe with Shauna's help and Kurt and Ina's help, and get additional thoughts from the board, and we can get something done relatively quickly. This shouldn't be a real heavy lift from a questionnaire standpoint.
Yeah, I think that would be a great idea. Do you want to try to do that by next month? And bring it back?
That's not a problem for me.
Yep, I'll work with you, Russ. We can draft something for the board to see.
Terrific.
Yeah, and I probably should have curtailed that more for this board, but I just did it quickly and wanted you to see what at least one of our clients is doing. So we'll fine tune it in advance of next month's meeting.
All right, thanks, Russ. Anything more on this topic? Okay, I don't have a chair's report. We're just happy to have Petite Kurt back with us.
I survived the moose.
Yes. Staff report.
Just two things that I want to call your attention. One, per your direction at the last meeting, we have scheduled another meeting of the Labor Committee for July the 30th. And so the principal point of order is talking about or making suggestions for a framework for either penalty money, or in the case of a separate project that I don't know if I'm authorized to say it by name, but they want to make an investment in local labor training programs proactively. It was part of their commitment for a project that had been approved by you anyway. So not just penalty money, but any money regarding local labor, and then what comes with that. So that meeting's scheduled for the 30th. I think that's a Monday. Thursday, thank you, Ina. I just got back today, so I haven't really.
Might be Monday in Maine.
Anyway, it's July the 30th. So that's happening. The other thing is we are still in the process of hiring a director of business services at IAD who will serve as the, with your approval, serve as the administrative director of the IDA. So I don't have anything that I'd like to share publicly other than we are still working through that process. And sorry for your luck, you're going to have me at least for August, I'm guessing.
We'll try to soldier on.
I could use a few more hours of sleep, then I'll be good to go.
Yeah. Any questions for Kurt or Ina? All right. Minutes approval. Can I get a motion on the June 10th minutes? Duck moves, Jerry seconds. All in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you. All right. Now, we will be going into executive session to discuss pending or threatened litigation. Can I get a motion for that, please? Jerry moves, Prentice seconds. All in favor? Thank you. Give us a few minutes to shut things down and get the appropriate